How's it going, Fitzroy? Here we are again, broadcasting live from the manse. Thanks to Alison this morning, and to her and Richard for all that they're doing in getting us. Fitzroy TV is almost a new channel for all of us now. And I want to start by doing that by thanking so many of you for keeping church going when church can't be done. Janice and I are trying to ring round some of you, and most of the people we ring round have already had a phone call from somebody in Fitzroy, or just know that Fitzroy is caring for them. So we're very thankful for that. So many people that are coming in with ideas, some people coming in with money, and that's good. A couple of things on the money is that we're obviously not putting donations in the plate for the next number of weeks, and Fitzroy needs that money to keep surviving, sadly. So if you're a person who doesn't do direct debit, maybe you would think about that. There's ways to give on the website, and if you can do that, that would be really, really helpful. We're also trying to engage with Home Plus. So many of our homeless out in the street, and we're working with Alexander's Bakery, so that we have that's Charmian Orr works with them. So what we have going is we have this keeping a business going while we feed the homeless, and that's out of an emergency fund that Fitzroy have set up for neighbourhood, and some of that's coming from general funds to get it going, but we would really love it if some of you would donate to the emergencies we're going to find in our neighbourhood as we go ahead. So thank you so much for all that you're doing at this time. Yesterday morning we were on Zoom meeting with our pastoral team, and Anne McMurray talked in that about some curve that she talks about in these things where I'm looking up at my notes here, where we have shock, denial, turbulence, and then eventually through a few others we get to learning and discovery. And I suppose my prayer is that we get to the learning and discovery sooner than later. I'm learning how to do stuff without an audience in front of me. I'm learning how to do 2 or 3 takes. I'm learning how to get rhythms that I never had before, how to run church from your kitchen table. It's a really interesting new learnings, and I'm hoping that we do that. And it's been interesting as I've been talking to some of you. Caroline Orr yesterday was saying that when she was going through her chemotherapy, her every 3rd week was in isolation. So she learned that the secret of that week was going into routine and making sure she did the same things every day. And that might be one of the ways that we help ourselves to get through this, is to go through a bit of a routine. Even the Stockmans, we kind of walk the dog at 4, we have our dinner at 5, half 5, then the family get together at night to show one movie, then we have a wee sneaky don't tell the government, but we have a wee walk up and down the street with the dog again. Little routines that are happening that helps us to see through these difficult times. The other thing that I want to share, which is a bit more serious, is that we get our heads into what's coming down the road. I've often listened to golf commentators who, when 2 players, maybe it's match play or they're in the last few holes of the British Open, and it's going head for head and toe for toe and shot for shot, and often you hear them saying every player has to be ready for what the other player does. Happened to me once. I was 1 down in a County Antrim Shield match. We 3 holes to play. I played a blinder of a tee shot into this par 3. I was 3 or 4 feet away, and my opponent was 20 yards left, right of the flag. And I thought, tap in, we're all square with 2 to play. I can take this. And he pitched up short, and I thought, even better. And then he pitched in with his 3rd shot. So instead of having 2 putts from 4 feet to win the hole, I now had to sink the putt to win the hole, and it got to my head and I missed the putt. And the ending is reasonably good because I got a win in the last hole to square the match, but I wasn't ready for what was coming next. And we need to be ready for what's coming next. Get ourselves thinking ahead to some of the challenges that are ahead of us. And for me as a pastor, one of those greatest challenges might be a funeral. Oh, please God, we get through this without any funerals. But if we have a funeral, it's not going to be a funeral like I've ever known it before, or like any of us have ever known it before, because it's likely that there's going to be 1 or 2 at a graveside, nobody at the crematorium, and we may even have to do some kind of Zoom service for people all in different rooms. That's a very different way to start a grieving process. And I think one of the ways that might help us, it's never going to be easy, but what might help us through that phase is if we're ready for it in advance. So let's consider some of the things up ahead and be ready for them and have our heads and our hearts and our souls ready for that wind that'll blow out of nowhere and knock us off our feet, as one of my favourite singers, Bruce Cockburn, often says. Then spiritually, there's all kinds of things we can learn. When we go to Uganda, certainly last year, I read a couple of passages from Philippians chapter 4, and they're short passages, so let me read them to you. Paul says in chapter 4, verse 4, he says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice." And then further down, he says, "I greatly rejoice in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you've been concerned but had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying that I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength." That phrase, to be content in everything, that came back to haunt me in Uganda. You know, you go into a different culture, things are done differently. You might not have the luxuries you normally have. Certainly hot showers are not something you can have. You're never sure about what food you're going to have set down to you. It's good food for the locals, but it might not be to our tastes. You might be delayed in your bus journey or whatever journey. You might be caught in traffic for hours. And so what you have to do in that situation is learn to be content whatever the situation. And of course, sharing that with the team before I went, I can hear in my ear now all the times during those 2 weeks last summer in Uganda when one of the errands, we had three, when one of the errands would say to me, "Be content in whatever your situation, Steve." And it was good, because we need to be reminded we're in a situation now where we've got to learn to be content, because this isn't stopping anytime soon. And so we need to exercise the muscles of our contentedness, and we've got to learn what it is to have Diet Coke in the fridge and have to drink water instead, or when we're down to the last bit because we don't want to be shopping every day, how we're going to cope with that. Let's hope we all have enough toilet rolls in. There's going to be things over this next period of time. It's time to get content. And the scriptures, Paul's telling us to get to be content. But there's two things that he says that might be keys to his contentedness. The first of them is to rejoice, and to rejoice always. It's maybe a good thing when we're feeling down, or when we're feeling negative, or when we're feeling that the news that we're hearing on the TV is all doom and gloom, and when are we ever going to get out of this, or are we ever going to get out of this? It might be good at those moments to just stop and give thanks. All the things that we have to give thanks for that are under our nose that we're not rejoicing in. Family being around, perhaps, or family supporting, or the neighbour that supports when we don't have family around. People coming to some of your doors and just handing you a bag of food. How much blessing is that at this point in time? Or the time that we have, time to maybe do a bit of clearing out. It was interesting yesterday when I was on the phone with a few of you that most of you were saying, "Oh, there's stuff to be done in the house, but I can't bring myself to do it." Maybe we'll get through the turbulence, the denial, and all of that, and we'll get a chance to just tidy out that cupboard that we've been wanting to tidy out for a time. But thankfulness that we have the time, thankfulness that we have Fitzroy, that we have this community of people around us at this stage, thankfulness for social media, for being able to do services in this kind of way that we couldn't do a few years ago, thankfulness for Disney Plus, as some of you are finding, where you can have a television in your room to watch TV. We're the generation that's blessed with that. Thanks to Alexa, who, when I say play Fleetwood Mac's Rumours, she plays Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. Thanks for delivery. We had Alexander's Bread bring bread to the doorstep this morning. There's all kinds of things that we need to give thanks for. And that might help us to be content in the situation. And then that last line, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Those were the first words that I was ever shared when I came to faith, and they've stuck with me all of my spiritual life. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And there's three ways that Christ strengthens us very, very quickly. The first thing is that this is a time to meditate on the Gospels and realize that Jesus lived through tough times, and that Jesus lived through those tough times being oppressed, being harassed, on the run at times, eventually being put on a cross. All these things that Jesus went through are showing us a resilience in the God that became human to live among us. So we have this incredible story of Christ that if we can get into that story, that can really strengthen us. And of course, Emmanuel, God with us, is the key that we're going to be going on and on and on about this year that we had no idea about when we preached about it in Fitzroy last year. We want to make sure that we know through this that the God who created the universe and Jesus became flesh and used that word Emmanuel to say God with us. So if we're wanting to find our contentedness, maybe we need to find our contentedness in a wee bit of rejoicing, thanksgiving every day, make it part of your routine, and then to meditate on this life of God as a human that gives us all the insights as to how we can get through our particular adversity at this time, remembering, and I'm praying for it every day, that Fitzroy knows that we have Emmanuel. I was just reflecting yesterday on my New Year's Eve greeting to you all. I refused last New Year, if some of you remember, I refused to say Happy New Year because I told us that something would come down the track that would be far from happy, and that I was wishing you an Emmanuel New Year. And how true those words are now. So yes, I'm hoping we might find some happiness in the midst of this. I'm hoping it's not all doom and gloom. But the way we're going to find some contentedness is to know Emmanuel, God with us. And that's what Janice and I and the girls are praying for you in the week that's ahead. God bless you.
The peace of the earth be with you, the peace of the heavens too. The peace of the rivers be with you, the peace of the oceans too. Deep peace falling over you. God's peace growing